Hi, it's Kathy, dietitian with the Highland Primary Care Network, and today I'm going to present to you our weight management myths and truths class, which is a class in our health improvement program. Normally we'd like to have a room full of people here, but as we can't get together right now, we thought we would offer you some classes online. Hope you enjoy. What is the Highland Primary Care Network? The Highland Primary Care Network is a group of healthcare professionals whose aim is to support the doctors from Airdrie out to Didsbury. So if you doctor from Airdrie out to Didsbury, then your doctor has a nurse and social worker attached. And all throughout this pandemic, you have access to your nurse and your social worker by phone visit, and all you need to do is contact your medical home or doctor's office. We do have a number of other healthcare professionals associated with the Highland Primary Care Network. So our exercise specialist or kinesiologist, myself, the dietitian, and our pharmacist, as well as having a number of specialty clinics that normally run out of the Highland Primary Care Network. This class is one of many in the Health Improvement Program, and the Health Improvement Program is designed to help you uncover the healthiest version of yourself. And it is a series of classes, and we're working really hard to get them all available virtually and out to you as soon as possible. So what we'll talk about today, a little on actually when you enroll in the health improvement program, the first course we recommend you take is the foundations course. And there's some key pieces in there as they relate to weight management, which is sleep and stress and our environments. And so I'll just pull a few little tidbits out from that class to talk about today. And then we'll talk about 3 common weight loss myths and the truth. And then we'll talk about, I like to always leave people with lots of ideas about what is working. So things like thinking long term. I will talk a little bit about fueling and hydrating the body. My favorite topic is mindful eating. And then we'll finish the day with SMART goals and a little on activity and movement. I typically do like to start and end my classes with a good quote that kind of gives a sense of what's been in the presentation. This is one I really like, and I think it's connected to a lot of people have connected to it. And the quote goes like this, and I said to my body softly, I want to be your friend. And it took a long breath and replied, I've been waiting my whole life for this. And why I think this is really important, I think a lot of us are fighting against our bodies a lot of the time, and it's not working out in our favor. So, yeah, the first thing I'd like you to consider is your environment. And the human body is nothing if not amazing. And we are amazing conservation machines. Your body will keep you alive for a long time. The research says 30 to 60 days we can survive without food as long as we have water. And it is an amazing thing, but as amazing as it is, it's a complete misalignment with our current environment where we can get food 24/7, and the foods that we can get the easiest and the least expensive tend not to make us feel that great, and they tend not to be that healthy for us. So the idea here is, can we try to make the environments we surround ourselves with a little healthier? And in saying that, I still acknowledge we can't always control, if you're out for a drive, billboards and TV, you can't always control all the commercials are on. Maybe you can't fast forward them all. But the more we're aware of it, I think has a big impact on our decision making and our choices. So one of the simple suggestions I like to offer for making the healthier choice easier is just when you come home from the grocery store is to chop up your veggies and put them in a tray and keep them at eye level. So when we come home and we're hungry, we're not reaching for something just out of the fact that there's nothing else there. And the other piece of that is surrounding yourself with family and friends who will support you in making healthy choices. And this is a tricky one, I know, because we can't always change our friends and family. But we can have a little thought about, who's really going to be in our corner and who might be less helpful or more of a barrier. And we may not always be able to change those people out of our lives. We may not want to. But we may start to think about changing our response to them so that it doesn't sabotage or get in the way of our moving forward. So the next few slides will try to get you to reframe your thinking a little bit, because we have been sold that weight and health are always tied together, and certainly we're finding that's not so much the case. And so I like to give this little analogy about just thinking about things differently, and how something can seem very real when it's up close, but if we pull out a little farther, sometimes it helps us find the realities of the situation, let's say. So this analogy that I'm going to talk about is stolen. It's from Eckhart Tolle, and he's a really brilliant author and has written a book called Power of Now, amongst others, but that's probably the most notorious one. And in that book, he talks about if you lived 400 years ago and you saw the sun rising and setting, you'd definitely be within your right to say, well, that's what happens. This globe rises in the east and then it sets in the west. And, in that context, you'd probably be, right. But now that we're 400 years later and we have so much, we can pull out so much farther, and we can see that actually we're just tumbling around this universe and definitely around our sun. That it's actually us that's moving. It's quite a different perspective. So if we can pull out a little bit about this, pull out and have some perspective about this weight, I feel like it can have a similar effect. Because I do feel it often people will come to me and they'll be like, you just have to help me lose this weight. And it's a very desperate, emotional plea. They're very weighed down by it. I would say emotionally weighed down by it. Sometimes it can get so tight in that they are losing perspective and losing some of the wonderful things that are going on in their lives. So while I talk about the next few slides, if you can just take a step back and kind of notice, maybe where some of the food rules or relationships you've had, maybe where they've served you, and then maybe where they haven't, and just try to see it from the outside, and if it gives you any changes in the way that you look at things. So the first one is really big. I talk about this all the time. It is my soapbox, and I think it will probably be till my career is done. So the number on the scale does not tell us how healthy you are. And I know this is hard for some people to digest, because it's been promoted in health. And every time you go to the doctors, I know they take your weight, and they will very likely continue to do so. But the truth of it is an indicator of our health. It's a fast, easy indicator that we can take. But when we look at the realities of it on its own, it's not a very reliable indicator of your health. So truth be told, if we go back through all the weight research of the 60s and 70s and 80s and early 90s, they didn't do a really good job of controlling for people engaging in a healthy set of behaviors. So what that means is all the people of a certain weight, whether they were active or inactive, were all placed in the same cohort together, for example. So they've gone back through that research and controlled for people engaging in a healthy set of behaviors, and they haven't even got to looking at sleep and stress yet. What they're looking is at healthy eating, and sometimes what the research will use is just the number of fruits and vegetable serving as an independent indicator of your diet quality. Active living, and typically we use the Canadian Physical Activity Guidelines of 30 minutes a day, adding up to, or most days adding up to 150 minutes a week. Absence of smoking, and then moderate or absence of alcohol. So those 4 healthy behaviors. So healthy eating, active living, absence of smoking, moderate or absence of alcohol. If people are engaging in those 4, then they found that the number on the scale actually doesn't make much difference to people's health outcomes. So what really does make the difference to people's health outcomes are those healthy behaviors: healthy eating, active living, absence of smoking and not having too much alcohol, or none at all. So yeah, if we're engaging in healthy habits, that number on the scale has very little meaning at all. And I've encouraged people to let it go as much as possible. Your doctor's still going to take it, but know that it's your choice to know that number. You can always ask to keep it, that you don't learn what that number is. If it's not serving you, and if it's not motivating to you, then I would suggest it might be time to let it go a little bit. So my avocados here are just a reminder that health really does come in every size. And that is a philosophy that I really try to promote throughout the PCN. Although sometimes we do have to look a little harder to find those examples of people that are different shapes and sizes, and are still healthy and vibrant. And so I'm a little disappointed I can't show you a video I wanted to hope that you'll click on the links below and take it in, because it's really worth it. Dana Falsetti is a yogi who has a really inspirational message. I would like to share a quote from the video if I could. So she says, "You lose 100 pounds, you expect to feel like a different person. I really didn't. I had been chasing that concept of I'm going to be happier when I'm smaller my entire life. And I know a lot of people are in that position, that they just feel heavy and they feel like nothing else matters until they can lose the weight. But I did that. I lost the weight and it still didn't matter. And that was the moment that I realized that that thing I had been chasing was irrelevant." And she has so many good messages and just a really body positive message that we can all follow and see. And I know that if we look a little beyond just what's immediately given to us, there are so many examples of this. So by no means am I saying that you have to run out and do yoga, and definitely not some of the poses that Dana does. I've been doing yoga a long time myself, and I can do very little of what she does. And that's not the point. It's just to not let our thoughts really limit us. And that's, whether our body's a certain shape. And I think this is something we do with age as well. We let our age limit us. I hear people say all the time, like, I'm getting older and my metabolism's going to decline. And we use it to limit ourselves. And certainly that can happen. And there are cases where we do have to slow down and pay attention to our bodies. But there are also examples of people where people live very vibrantly into their 70s and 80s and 90s. So it's just about not letting our thoughts limit us. So this is Sister Madonna Buder, and I find her so inspiring because she's done over 325 triathlons. And the coolest thing about her is that she never started training until she was 48 years old. And she actually didn't compete until she was 52. And I find the takeaway message there is that it's never too late to try something new. And she's complete, like I said, over 325 triathlons, including 45 Ironman distances. And she is our world record holder in Canada for completing our Ironman when she was 82 years old. So pretty inspirational. And I will say that these are extreme examples, and I know that both Dana and Sister Madonna Buder are pretty extreme, and I'm by no means saying that we have to go out and do really challenging, difficult yoga poses or run triathlons, but just that we can look beyond maybe the limits that we've set for ourselves and try something new, put ourselves out there, do something a little differently. So I like to use the concept of weight neutrality. Neutral weight or natural weight is the weight that your body functions well for you. It's a place that has nothing to do with the number on the scale, but it's a place that your body defines. It's like a set point they'll often use, but it takes care of itself with normalized eating. And normalized eating simply means eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're full. It's stable. A neutral weight or natural weight is stable, and it resists change despite variables. So some days you eat a little more and some days you eat a little less, and the body just adjusts. The human body is actually quite amazing at doing this. It can be maintained without too much trouble, so it doesn't need a diet. And it comes on all, like I said, it's not about a number on the scale. It comes in all shapes and sizes. So my other big reframing, and actually I don't think this one is news to anybody. So the myth is that diets work. I think I've had enough people in my classes who've said, I've been on all these diets, and actually usually what people say is I've been on A diet and it worked for me. I've been on B diet and it worked for me. I've been on C diet and it worked on me, but then I failed it. That's a very common thing that I hear. So that's really sad, because what we do is give all the credit to that external thing, the diet, and we take all of the failure on ourselves. And what we are not recognizing there, and what I love bringing people together. Unfortunately, I can't bring us all together, but I will hope we can get together soon someday. But why I love bringing people together is they realize they're not alone. And the research would say that 95 to 98% of people who attempt a diet, quote unquote, fail it. So it's not the people that are the problem, it's the diet. So I like to tell people about this particular study because it was very, very well done, and it exemplifies a whole body of research about dieting behaviors. So they had a pool of adolescent girls. And it's not perfect science, because with humans you can't always, randomly assign. But what they did was do a little survey to find out what they thought about their bodies. And what is really important about this is that all of them were a normal weight to begin with, healthy and normal. And they did a little research to find out who felt that they were felt that they were too large. And once they had identified that, they separated the two groups, girls that actually believed they were a normal weight and girls that felt they were too large. Again, they were all healthy behaviors, healthy weights. But and once they separated the two groups out, then they controlled and they paired them. So they did a very good pairing. They checked for, things like age and things like, economics and cultural, and they tried to pair them together really well as can be, so that they controlled for all those external things. And what they found is the girls that believed that they were a larger size started to engage in some kind of dieting behavior. They may not have said they were on a diet. They may have just started to skip breakfast or skip lunch, or it could have been any of the gamut of dieting behaviors that are out there. But they did do something in order to bring their weight down. And what they found at the end of the study is the girls that perceived that they were a heavier weight had gained more weight by the end of the study. And it was just a really good example of how our weight, how our preoccupation with weight and dieting and restrictive eating behaviors can lead to weight gain in the long term. And at the bottom of the slide there, it says that weight cycling is unhealthier. It's worse for our health than just having a few extra pounds on. And then the last myth here, skipping breakfast or another meal will reduce my calories, which will help me lose weight. And I think this is a really common idea out in the public. I don't think it's always this conscious. I think we're very busy. I think it's, you're running out the door and you're thinking, oh, well, I'm trying to cut back anyway, and you head out without breakfast. I would say it is the most common error people make. It's not uncommon for people to tell me, even that they might have a very small breakfast, so they have a little yogurt and berries. This is what they'll say. They'll say, I don't know what's wrong. I start out so good. I start breakfast and I have a yogurt and berries. And then at lunch, I have a salad. And then I don't know what goes wrong with me. I lose all my willpower. I come home and I'm snacking while I make dinner. And then I make dinner and I'm eating all night long. Really, your body has just done exactly what you told it to. You essentially, didn't feed it, or you fed it very lean. You're telling it to be in hibernation mode, to not use too much energy because you're not giving it much. And then that causes a shift in our hormones, and a lot of other signals in the body, so that it's saying, feed me, feed me. And when you're coming home at night is when you're more apt to listen to it. So that's when we tend to get a lot of cravings. Um, so my idea is always, I like a good analogy. You'll learn that about me. And I always like to think about the body like a furnace. So we want to get it fired up early. You know how it is with a fire. If it's burning really hot and really well, you can put a lot of logs on there and it's kind of just burning through them. And the body is not that much different from that. What we tend to do in our culture is, put a few twigs on and we may have this little like pilot light burning there. There's not much going on. And then at lunch, we might put another little bit of sticks on the fire, but nothing's really burning. And then at the snack before supper, supper, and then the snacks after supper, you can picture piling huge logs on that little pilot light, and essentially nothing is really burning. It's just sitting there. So that can be a way you can think of it. If we can, a lot of times I've been able to help people just by shifting around where and putting some good meals in the top of the day, and they didn't even have to change what they eat, just the time that they eat things. And reframing all or nothing thinking. This is so common. This is human nature, just to be all in or all out. So the most common example I think that everyone can relate to is how the gyms are so busy in January. And then by this, and even earlier, I would say by March or April, they start to get really quiet. And that what we tend to do is make this, a resolution, and we hit the gym really hard. We try to, if we're not there for an hour, it's not worth going. So and we made our pledge to ourselves to be there 4 times a week. So even though our lives are already very busy and it's throwing ourselves into chaos to try to work this goal in, we're all in. The unfortunate part of that is, what tends to happen is that we're either all in or we're out. Eventually it gets too hard, it's complicated, it causes us other problems in our lives, and then we quit, we're out. So I do find that humans just love a 30-day challenge, and we love to hate ourselves into change. I'm a big supporter of trying to nurture ourselves into change. Small changes that we can live with for a lifetime. It would make a lot more sense for us to say 10 minutes, if we haven't been active at all, to say, after dinner, 10 minutes, I'm going to go out for a walk. And if we did that every single Monday for the rest of our lives, we'd be so much better than a 30-day challenge we do once and don't do anything again for a few years, and then we do it again. Consistency is really key. Small, manageable goals. Really, I can't say enough about that. So yeah, look inside what feels good. Forget about the fad diets. Think about tuning into yourself. Um, the human body is amazing. Your body is amazing, and we do come with the ability to find balance for ourselves. The problem with I would say our culture is that we tune too much into the external, and we don't tune into our own cues of hunger and fullness. So yeah, think long term, think small changes that you can live with for a lifetime. And I also really like this. I find this is a piece of all or nothing thinking. We make what we would call a mistake, and I wish we would view mistakes differently in our world and view them as just an opportunity to learn rather than something that makes us feel smaller and something that we did wrong. But very often the stereotypical thing is, oh, I had a slice of cake, I'm quote unquote off the wagon. That's a term I really dislike. And then I eat half the cake. That kind of idea, that's really all or nothing thinking as well. So if we have a little slip up, we're not worried about it. It's like, what did I learn from it and how can I move forward? Oh, and very definitely think about making food and eating a pleasurable experience and not a chore. And I cannot count the number of people who've come into my office with some diet sheet that they got from somebody, and they slap it down and say, "I'm doing this, but I hate it." And we will not stick. We can do anything for a short time. Humans are amazing that way, but we cannot sustain something like that. So if we're on the treadmill and we're like, "I'm doing this, but I hate it," we are not likely to stick with it. And it's the same with healthy eating. So we want to think about kind of shifting back to making food and eating something that's, fun and exciting again, and not filled with so many rules and measurements and, well, especially rules. We should say it twice. So common things by we, I mean sort of us at the PCN here, but definitely me. I can talk for myself for sure. No breakfast, skipping meals, uh, people low on water, but I would say this is one of the ones that people are really picking up on and doing a lot better with most of the time. Low fruits and vegetables, definitely across the board, I would say, and low on fiber. So I always like people to focus on positive changes and not what they shouldn't do, if that doesn't make any sense. Um, I like people to focus on, so say they want to um, not drink so much coffee. Instead of saying, I shouldn't drink coffee, I shouldn't drink coffee, I just focus them on what's the healthy behavior they want to attract in, and say water is what they'd like to get more of. So we focus on, okay, I have 5 glasses of water right now. I'm going to aim for 7. Um, and see if maybe that behavior that you don't want will slide off a little bit. Um, if we're focusing on something like I shouldn't have chocolate all day long, I shouldn't have chocolate, I shouldn't have ice cream. What have I thought about all day? I've thought about chocolate and ice cream. And when we do that, when we thought about something all day, we are way more likely to indulge and then overindulge. And it's not uncommon for people to say, instead of having a small portion of ice cream, I ate half a pint. I just really lost control. And that's when we've given the food too much power. Yeah, so fuel and hydrate the body, and this speaks to what I was talking about that the fire, the furnace, and the fire, and getting things fired up early. But like I said, it's the most common mistake I see people make, that things go off the rails later in the day because we haven't fueled ourselves earlier in the day. So if I wish I had a little machine that was like a metabolism machine instead of a scale, and I think that would serve us so much better. Um, I'm not big on having a lot of rules, and but I do like the little guideline of eating within 2 hours of waking. So lots of ideas here of things you could eat for breakfast in the morning. And then not going more than 4 hours at any given time without eating. So if you know you're going to go more than 4 hours, it's a good time to throw a little snack in there. This just makes the body feel comfortable. It knows that it's going to get the nourishment it needs. It can run you not in hibernation mode, but in our regular energy mode. And so it's burning energy and making you feel at your best. So yeah, grab and go snacks. These are just things that people have said over the years that they would include in their snacks, things that can grab and go. I love to encourage the direction of fruits and veggies just because I know as a culture we're quite low, especially Canada is quite low and then Alberta is quite low. So yeah, it's just a good place to focus there. So have something with you in case things go a little sideways. You can just have Fiber is our friend. I can't say enough good things about fiber. Think of it like a sponge going through your body and cleaning it as it goes. I know a lot of people, when they think of fiber, they just think about regularity. And that's something else that's really common for people to say, is that they don't need fiber because they're very regular. But fiber has so many other functions in the body. It can help us regulate our blood sugars. It can help us bring our cholesterol down. It has a lot of functions in the body. So, oh, another word that's in the quotes there, detox, that I really dislike, just because it's so misused. Um, and really, the human body is so amazing. The liver and kidneys, the way they function, to help us get rid of waste that we take in, or detox, are just amazing. And what they actually, especially what the liver needs to do its job properly, is good nutrition, so good nutrients. So just as an example, this is just an example I like to throw out, but for a cup of coffee, to change it into something that we can actually excrete. So essentially that's what we call detox, right? Taking something in and then changing it into something that we can get rid of. Um, it takes magnesium 4 times in that pathway. So just 1 cup of coffee needs a lot of magnesium. Where do we get our magnesium from? I think of greens. I think of beans and lentils. I think of nuts and seeds. And we, as a whole culture, we don't tend to focus on those foods very often. We don't tend to get them in as much. So just something to think about. What the body needs is not another fast. Unless you fast for religious purposes, I think that is in a separate category. Um, but what I'm talking about is when you do a fast for physiological purposes, it actually makes a lot more sense to fuel the body well, so that the liver and kidney can just do what they're made to do and function. Oh, and try things outside of the box, and things you might not try very often. We have a lot of amazing grains, and yet in Canada, what we mostly focus on is wheat, and it tends to be very processed. Things like cereal and bread are very processed forms of wheat. So if you can try to think beyond the box or beyond the bread bag, a little bit, and experiment. Not that those are bad foods by any means, but we just really have a focus on them. And there's other things like barley, oats, millet, quinoa, brown rice, and there's so many more out there. But these are good starters, I'd say. Oh, and fiber. I already talked about a number of the functions. So yeah, brings our cholesterol down or helps with heart disease. It also definitely does have an effect on the low bowel, and keeps it stretchy and keeps it elasticy, and that can protect us against cancers. Helps you feel full. Um, the regularity piece, we all seem to know that one. Just regulate blood sugar in the body. So these are just a few of tips that we've come up with in class over time. One of the best ways to boost our fiber intake is just to get more fruits and vegetables. If you have a cereal in the morning that's not very high in fiber, I like to recommend to add either bran or flaxseed or chia or hemp hearts. You can just sprinkle it on. I also like psyllium husk. That can be one that you can get in the bulk bins, and you could just do a tablespoon or two of psyllium husk, and it can add a lot of fiber. For something like bran or flax or chia or hemp, I usually recommend a tablespoon or two in your cereal in the morning. And then those amazing beans, peas, and lentils, dried peas and beans, like those are really pack a fiber punch. So you can add them to soups. A real easy idea I like to give people is just to make a batch of lentils, and if you buy dried lentils, you can just boil them for approximately 20 minutes, and I freeze them in my muffin tins, and then when they're frozen, I knock them out into a Ziploc bag. And then when I make a lot of things, anything that's saucy, like a spaghetti sauce or a pizza sauce, or if I make a soup of some kind, I just throw like a puck of lentils in, and it'll make it a little healthier. Or if I make something with ground beef, if I make tacos or lasagna, I throw a little bit of the lentils in there, and it'll stretch the beef. So lentils are very inexpensive compared to beef, and they're also very versatile, and they'll probably, like, my kids don't notice them. They kind of disappear in what you make them, what you make it in. So you probably won't change the flavor of your dish very much, but will give you a lot more fiber and nutrition. So fruits and vegetables. So this is the old guideline. We actually have a new food guide, and it doesn't have it's not so much on the servings of food anymore, but I would say that there's enough research to say that 8 to 10 fruits and vegetable servings would be something to shoot for, and know that I know it's not realistic for everybody. If you're eating 2, we're not going to aim for 8 tomorrow, but if you're eating 2, aiming for 3 is a great goal. But 8 to 10 servings of fruits and vegetables, I would say if we got most people up to that, we may see a big reduction in some of the health problems that we have going on. So it's a great place for people to focus, and just keep in mind that little steps. Don't let that 8 to 10 um, daunt you or get in your way at all. Definitely start where you are at. So yeah, this is the sad stat that I was kind of alluding to. Only 40% of Canadians eat 5 servings of fruit and vegetables daily. So 5 is about halfway to where we said we were going to be, and not even half of us are halfway there. So we it's definitely an area where we could use some improvement, I would say. Yeah, so just a few ideas, adding some. I always like to give the guideline because, I don't like rules. I said that already. That every time you put something in your mouth, think about having a fruit or vegetable there. So when you have your breakfast in the morning, if you just have cereal and milk, can we add a bit of fruit to that? If you're having a snack, could we add if you're having a cookie, could we add a piece of fruit to that? Could we add some veggies and hummus, or veggies and dip even? One way to sneak it in that people tend to like if they're not too fond of veggies is to add a bit of greens to their smoothies. And you can add anything to your smoothies, really. I notice if I have a cauliflower or some broccoli and it's just starting to turn and we're not going to eat it all, I'll add that to my smoothies, or I'll add carrots. Or the traditional you hear about all the time is people adding spinach or kale. Anything is, I find that the taste of the fruit kind of masks the vegetables in there, and it can be an easy way to get it in. Adding a salad, that's a pretty simple one. And then my little tip off the top there, just keep the veggies washed, well, the veggies and the fruit washed and sliced and ready to go and grab and go. Drinks, I always say you're sweet enough, choose water or milk. So I always like to explain this a little bit. If you have a drink that you have once or twice a year or very infrequently, and it's your favorite and it just is something you really enjoy, I would say do not worry about the nutrition. Just really enjoy it and savor it. But if you have a habit that's sort of, every other day, or a daily of a sweet drink, I would be checking the nutrition on it and seeing what's in there. Those specialty beverages, like the coffees, hot drinks, those kinds of things, and even some of the beverages you can buy at the convenience store, sometimes they're between 500 and 1,000 calories. And I'm not a calorie counter, but it just gives us a measure of energy to say, whoa, that's a lot of my day's total energy. Say you were shooting for 1,500 and you had a drink that was 1,000 calories. That's really taken up a good portion of that. So yeah, if it's an everyday habit, become a label reader and ask some questions. But if it's like, I have this drink once at Christmas, then go ahead, enjoy it. To do any more research. Ways just to things, healthy drinks, and ways we can make them more exciting. Use those fresh lime slices, lemon, to flavor the water. Some people have talked about freezing, strawberries or grapes and having it in a diffuser or in the water. Keep your water bottle with you. If it's not with you, you won't have it. So some people like it cold in the fridge. Some people like to keep it at room temperature, so you can kind of play around with the temperatures. Maybe you add a splash of juice. Some people really like that carbonation in sparkling water. And if you do choose a sugar sweetened beverage, whatever it is, look for the smaller size. Although I see everything seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Like a Slurpee now, it seems like even the small is quite large. So yeah, just be careful there, because again, it's easy to drink our day's worth of calories just in sugar sweetened beverages. And I mentioned this already, things that are working better are the no quick fixes, the no fad diets, and thinking small change that we can live with for our lifetime. Self-acceptance. Oh, so often I hear people say, like, when I lose the weight, I will do this. Um, I think we want to be really careful about the messages we're giving ourselves. So often when I've asked people what their self-talk like, we're not being very kind to ourselves. And really, when we beat ourselves up, it's not very motivating, and it's not going to help us make any positive change. So I like to get people to make a rule, like if you wouldn't say it to your friend or your mom, don't say it to yourself. And that inside out approach, that's just alluding to, don't wait. Don't, I remember somebody saying to me, well, when I lose the weight, then I'll get a bathing suit and I'll start swimming. But it would be really good for us, right? Just to get that bathing suit and start swimming, or, buying clothes that fit, or doing something you want to do. I want to try yoga, try yoga. Don't wait. So yeah, that's the inside out approach. Just, liking the skin we're in, trying to get comfortable in that. Because I do find that when I've seen the biggest shifts in people, it came from this place of self-acceptance, of being liking and being okay with who they are, and then it's really a lot easier to take better care of ourselves. So yeah, let's think of life as an experiment with no bad or good. I don't know how many times I've heard people say, I'm so bad, I had a piece of chocolate cake. We have to stop beating ourselves up about these things. I am disappointed with our limitations of the current technology that I can't embed this video into this YouTube presentation for you today. It is one of my favorites, and I think a lot of people have connected with it. I hope you will go to the links below and give it a watch, either now or after you're done this presentation. I really, really think it's powerful. It's basically highlighting how we are our own worst enemies and very hard on ourselves and don't appreciate all the beauty that we have to offer the world. Really, is what it's about. So, yeah. So check it out. It is a good one, and it's worth the extra click to get to it. And that brings us to my favorite topic, which is mindful eating. And the simplest definition of that I know of mindful eating is just paying attention on purpose to what we eat. So being very purposeful with what we eat, having some intention, and some awareness around the foods that we're putting in. A lot of times, if I ask people what they think when I say mindful eating, they'll say it brings to mind a time when they ate mindlessly. So they grabbed a bag of chips from the pantry, they sat in front of the TV, and they were munching away. Before they knew it, their hand was scraping the bottom of the bag, and they didn't even remember tasting them or enjoying them. So that is mindless eating, which is the opposite. We want the polar opposite of that, being really mindful when we eat. And it can be very simple in theory, but a little more difficult to practice. And I think practice is a really good word, because it tends to be a skill that doesn't come overnight, but is a continual practice in our way of being. And really what we want to tune in to is our own cues of hunger, and instead of fullness, almost being comfortably satisfied with what we've eaten. So eating when we're hungry and stopping when we're comfortably full. I am so passionate about mindful eating because I find that probably more than any other strategies that I've used in my career, it's helped people really create a better relationship with food and eating. And just a lot of people have become healthier and happier as a result of trying some of the concepts. And I do have a class, like I mentioned, in mindful eating that we're going to have available online. So take a click around our YouTube channel and see if you can find it there. Or there's also amazing books on mindful eating, and these are two of my favorites. The first one, Intuitive Eating, is by two dietitians, and so Evelyn Triboli and Elise Reich. And the second book that I have up there is called Eat What You Love What You Eat, and it's by Michelle May, and she's a retired family physician. I would say they're both, I've read a lot of books on mindful eating, and these are two of my absolute favorites. I find there's lots of information in not a lot of pages. I would say there's quite a bit of crossover between the two. So I don't know that you would have to read both of them. You'd pick one that calls to you, and you'd get a lot of the same information between the two. They're both really well-written books and fairly easy to read too. So that would be my recommendation if you'd like a book on this topic. Yeah, so just tuning into our own cues. It can take some time, especially if you're really used to tuning out our body. We might not recognize cues of hunger and fullness. And some people say, especially when they skip breakfast, I don't get hungry. So the body does, that is actually a little yellow flag to me when the body doesn't give cues of hunger. Sometimes it can be a sign the body's under stress. As far as the primitive brain goes, when the body's under stress, it doesn't really make a lot of sense in the primitive part of the brain, a stress would have been, I have to get out of here, something's going to eat me. It doesn't make sense for the brain to also signal, well, I'm hungry right now. I'm running away from this threat, but I need to stop to eat. So it takes some time to tune into those cues if we haven't been paying attention. And I would say it takes fueling the body properly, and especially in the early day, to start getting those cues of hunger and fullness. If we never have eaten till we're full, if we always eat till we're over full, it might take a while to tune in and kind of feel where that proper cutoff point is. One little tip that I like to give is to, when you're hungry, but can you pay attention to when the hunger is dissipating rather than being full? It's kind of interesting to tune into the process in between, the transition, and see if you notice that. So it can take an even longer time to experiment with foods and see which combination is best for you. And that's just something I like to throw in here, is that there's no one best way for the human body to eat. There are so many different ways. The quote I like to use is one that says, you can eat vegetarian and be healthy. You can eat paleo and be healthy. You can eat gluten-free and be healthy. Absolutely. But do you have to do any of those things to be healthy? No, you don't. There are as many different ways to eat healthy as there are people on the planet. We just want to find a way that works for you, that fits your lifestyle, that makes you feel your best, really. So the next little part here is a bit of a shift. On occasion, people say, well, it kind of doesn't fit with some of the other things you're saying. All I want to do is to bring mindfulness to. So just noticing, because I do think we eat mindlessly a lot of the time. We're not paying attention to what we eat. I'm definitely not big on counting the calories, but there's no really way for me to show you what their energy is like without that right now, and how we can just make small changes and it can make a big difference. So, for example, 3 slices of regular pepperoni pizza You can see the calories there. It's about 700. I like the idea of half your plate with fruits and vegetables. That's the new food guide. So I'm going to fill my plate with a half salad on this other side. It's got some dressing, Italian dressing, it looks like. Um, and then I cut down my pizza. You can see that's a big reduction in the amount of energy we're taking in. We're getting a lot more nutrition from that meal because of the salad. So the take-home message here is not about counting calories, but I think it's about filling my plate, half my plate, with veggies. And if you're not quite there to where you fill half your plate, think about just, a little less and a little more on one side, and just kind of working it over. Yeah, when people come in, I ask a lot of questions, and it's not because I'm nosy, it's because of this. When somebody says a muffin, do they mean a muffin that they made in their kitchen? Or do they mean something they got at a coffee shop? Or do they mean a Costco-sized piece of cake for a family of 4? There's a lot, there's a lot of room for interpretation in our wording. Yeah, so you can see the difference there, and how that could make a huge impact in how we're eating. And like most foods, a muffin can be very healthy or maybe not so much, depending on, you know, what it is exactly. And this is what I was talking about, the new food guide. So you'll see half your plate of veggies. That's the plate method, which is actually a really simple way that people have found to change their eating habits. So half your plate is filled with fruit or veggies. We like to put the emphasis on veggies. And then a quarter of your plate is the grains, whole grain food, and then a quarter is proteins. And you'll notice in the new version of the food guide there was a high focus on plant-based proteins, so more vegetarian options. There's definitely meat on the food guide. There's fish and meat there, but they did have definitely a stronger emphasis on plant-based proteins. The messages on the back side are super simple. Some people have criticized that they're overly simple, but I actually really like them, and there's actually quite a bit of research behind each one of them. So, message on the back side: be mindful of your eating habits, cook more often, enjoy your food. I think that's such an important one that we've really missed the boat on. If we're enjoying our food and savoring it, sometimes our body will just say, that's good. I feel full. I've had enough. And we see this in other cultures. We see this in French culture and Greek culture, where they actually eat really rich cheeses, but they only have a little bit because that's all you need to satisfy you. So consider that. And then the last message there is eating meals with others, which is such an interesting bit of research. So if we just eat our meals with others, no matter what we're eating, we will be healthier. So it's just interesting to think about. So yeah, the healthy plate method I already talked about, so I'll kind of fly through this now. Quarter grains, a quarter meat, and half the plate with veggies. Milk or water on the side, kind of the idea there. Hand portion guide. We've used this in diabetes a little bit because you always have your hands with you. Although I recognize that some people's hands are much bigger than others, but it gives you kind of a general rule. Your fist is about the size of your fruit portion or your grain/starches. I also like to think about the size of a tennis ball here as a more objective measure. Veggies, I love this one. Just as much as you can hold, you can go heavy on the veggies. We're not worried about it. Meats, size of the palm of your hand, width of your thumb, and again, as a more objective measure, you might like to use the size of a deck of cards. And fats, we sort of say the tip of the thumb, so that's about a tablespoon. But again, these are just guidelines. If you know when you have meat, if you know your meat portion is always quite large, my favorite strategy is just noticeable difference. So that means just enough maybe 1 or 2 bites less and kind of shifting slowly. Or same thing if you know I always overportion my potatoes. I love them. I way overdo them. Then you just say 2 bites less. And that doesn't, that doesn't cause too much to happen in the brain. The brain isn't sensing deprivation. We don't tend to notice it, to be honest. And over time, we can just slowly cut it back to a more reasonable. So, is there any small changes you could make that you feel you could live with for a lifetime? What happens typically is people get, they get excited and they get motivated and they want to make change. And we tend to pick, well, I'm going to get more active and I'm going to do a activity goal. I really encourage 1 or 2 small changes. Something that you think is very manageable. If you think, oh, I can do that, it's easy, then that's a great change for you. And there's my little word about just noticeable difference. Think about things, just a small change, or like Jamie said, don't change much. And over time, it will make a huge impact on your health. This is just a quote I really like about writing down goals. So SMART goals, I know a lot of industries use them and people very often, a number of our participants will be familiar with SMART goals. SMART's just an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, achievable. This slide says rewarding, but I often use realistic and time frame. So it has a time frame attached. So what we find with goals is people are like, yeah, I want to eat healthier. That's my goal. But it's a very a broad goal. And what we want to do is kind of boil it down and make it more specific. So this is an example, like I will eat breakfast, including 3 food groups, 3 days this week. And I will shop on the weekend and start on Monday. So you have a starting time, you kind of have an action plan on what you do to start your goal. Notice it's not 7 days a week. It's a doable, realistic number. The more specific we are, the better with our goals. And activity. So lots of reasons to be active. And we are meant to move. Our bodies are just meant to move. But when we're on the treadmill and we're saying, I'm doing this, but I hate it, we're not likely to stick with it. So pick an activity that you love and enjoy, and you do just for the doing of it. And then the health benefits are just an extra bonus. So, maybe you have to think about things you used to do when you were younger or things you've always wanted to try. It doesn't have to be going to the gym. It can be going out for a walk. It can be closing all the curtains and dancing around your house. It can be golfing. It can be gardening. There's so many ways to get ourselves moving. Again, we just want to find one that works for us, that we enjoy, and just the doing of, so that will stick. If we're loving it, we're going to stick with it. Yeah. So fit activities into your day. Definitely those ideas about parking a little farther away, taking the stairs, breaking it into smaller chunks, and just starting with one small thing can really be, maybe a walkabout on the commercials or lifting soup cans in your kitchen, or having a little squat before you sit down. I do believe every little bit counts. And sorry, there's a little typo there. So just to recap what we talked about today, tips to aid in your success. So this is nothing new. At the beginning, I told you what we were going to talk about, and then we talked about it. And now I'm just kind of recapping. So setting the stage, getting plenty of good quality sleep. We actually didn't talk about that this time, but that is something we talk about in Health Foundations. Looking for healthy, positive ways to cope with stress. Again, just pulling those messages out of Health Foundations. We did talk about this one, which is self-acceptance and being kind to ourselves. Okay, and fueling and hydrating the body. My little rules of thumb or guidelines there. Trying to eat within 2 hours of waking, and trying not to go more than 4 hours without eating. Drink water and milk most of the time. Eating when you're hungry but not starving, and stopping when you're, we're going to say, comfortably satisfied instead of full. Slow down, savor the meal, enjoy the experience. That's all mindful eating concepts. And if you want more on that, then find our mindful eating class and take that one. Eat more fruits and vegetables at meals than the other foods, so that half the plate idea. Or if you're not, haven't done it before and you just put a little on your plate, then that is moving in a great positive direction. And looking for those higher fiber choices. Favorite quote, which is strive for progress, not perfection. Small steps work better than giant leaps. Just pick 1 or 2 small changes that you can live with for a lifetime, and find movement or activity that you enjoy doing it just for its own sake, and that'll keep you doing it. And that brings us to the end of our presentation. I really hope that you found something within it that will, a little tidbit or something that will help you on your health journey. And I hope you take good care and know that there's other classes available on our YouTube channel that you can take to keep on learning. Take really good care. Bye-bye.